Hi guys, welcome back. It's Olivia and I'm talking to you guys about Australia. This is part 2, so now I get to share with you guys all of the awesome, beautiful, amazing places in Australia that you can and should go while you're there. Before I get started though, I wanted to talk about transportation options so that you can kind of plan ahead and know what you're working with as far as getting to all these beautiful places. So if you're in the cities like Sydney or Melbourne or bigger cities, have really nice and reliable public transportation systems like buses and trains and subways and things like that. So all of the cities use the same sort of transportation card. You can just go into a gas station or a service station or market or something like that and pick up one of these cards. In Sydney it's called an Opal card. I know it's called something different in Melbourne and probably Brisbane and Cairns and stuff too. But same concept as you go in and you charge it with however much money you want. And then when you're getting on your mode of transportation, so your bus or your train or whatever, you tap it up against this little monitor and it goes ding, and then you're checked on for that ride. A normal bus ride would be probably anywhere from like $2 to $5. So use that for public transportation. Bigger cities also have Uber and taxis and things like that. If you're looking to go longer distances, flights within Australia are normally pretty cheap, so booking a flight with a budget airline to get from city to city is a great idea. You can also use bus companies like Greyhound, who are good about going really far distances. I've been on multiple overnight buses, which are not the best, but they get you there. What you can also do with these bus passes is buy a hop-on, hop-off bus pass, which is what I used in order to travel all the way from Sydney up to Cairns, or the entire east coast of Australia. This route is something that you're going to hear a lot about, the East Coast. How was your East Coast? What was your favorite part of your East Coast? Have you done the East Coast? Well, on my East Coast, I blah blah blah. So it kind of turns into this like personal journey that each traveler who goes to Australia ends up taking in some form or another. Simply because it is just like this entire collection of insanely beautiful places that Australia has to offer, all in a row, just like right down or up the coast. Along this journey, you are going to find places like surfing, beach towns, little islands that you can go off and explore, scuba diving, hostels, parties. Pretty much everything is along this coast. So starting from Sydney going up, I'm going to tell you the places that I went to. So I started out in Sydney, and the first place that's worth mentioning outside of Sydney is Byron Bay. Now, Byron Bay is a really cute, artsy, sort of hippie-esque beach town and is famous for its surf. So if you're looking to take a surf lesson, definitely do it in Byron Bay. The water is gorgeous and the surfer bro Aussies up there that you're going to get as your teachers are hilarious. Byron Bay is sort of a backpacker, touristy hub, but it's also one of the wealthier parts of Australia for Australians to live in. I know like Chris Hemsworth lived there, so that's kind of cool. Definitely have a few days to explore this area because it's like super chill, sort of island vibe life. So you're going to want to have a few days to hang out there and take a surf lesson, go on a kayaking tour, maybe a hike, and hang out with some of the cool people that you meet there. So just above Byron Bay on the coast is the Gold Coast, and this is where Surfers Paradise is. Now, Surfers Paradise is a bigger city, super touristy, and is famous for this view, which you can get in the Sky View Tower, which is like this rotating restaurant on top of this super tall tower that looks out over the entire coastline. It's really cool, and I suggest going up there. Even if you don't have a meal, just go up there to take some pictures. I was only there in Surfers Paradise for one night, so I didn't actually get to experience the city that much, but from what I can tell, it's pretty cool, a little bit bigger, and definitely a good place to go shopping and buy your souvenirs and maybe take a pub crawl or something like that, because I saw advertisements for that everywhere. Just above Surfers Paradise is Brisbane. And Brisbane is probably one of the bigger cities that's along the coast here. The coast is sort of littered with all these like really small, cute beach surfer towns, and Brisbane is like the big city. So I actually didn't stop here because I figured like it would be just another big city and I wanted to see more of the quaint little beach town. So I skipped over Brisbane and I went straight up to Noosa, which was exactly what I wanted. It was this really, really tiny tropical paradise bubble. And there were backpackers, there was fancy restaurants, there was fancy hotels, there was hostels. And so it was kind of just this mesh of like, if you want to go really nice, you can. If you want to go super budget, you can. I was really budget and I stayed in a hostel. It was really cute, really close to the beach. I was able to walk there in like less than 20 minutes. And then from the beach, I actually took a hike that went from the main beach all the way around up to this point where you could look out and see dolphins and turtles and a whole bunch of sea life pretty much like all the time. So past Noosa, my next stop was Fraser Island. Fraser Island is an island just off the coast of a little town called Rainbow Beach. I stopped in Rainbow Beach and the next day hopped on a ferry to get over to Fraser Island. You have to take a ferry to get to Fraser Island, and you also need a four-wheel drive vehicle in order to navigate the island. You can go over there with a tour, or if you already have a vehicle or want to rent a vehicle for your time on the island, you can do that. I went on the tour and it was just like, and it was set up like the tour guide was in the first vehicle, and then there was two other vehicles behind him that would just follow him around the island. And we were there for a few days, and our tour guide was really good at making sure that we were up early enough to beat everybody to the places that we wanted to go so that we could get our cool pictures and not have that many people in them. Some of the places on this island are Lake Mackenzie, which looks like this. It's absolutely insanely beautiful. The water is like so clear. Hanging out here for a day is a must do. There's also a shipwreck on the beach on Fraser Island, which is really fun to go and take pictures of. It's super eerie and it actually sinks into the sand and like a pretty good amount every year. So they're saying that it's not going to be there forever. So when you go, definitely check out the USS Shipwreck that is on the beach there. Then when you come back to the coast, above Fraser Island there is Airlie Beach, where you can access the Whitsunday Islands. And the Whitsunday Islands is a collection of 74 different islands. Most of them are uninhabited. Most of them are uninhabited. This is actually one of the most popular yachting destinations for people with yachts in the southern hemisphere. But what you can do as a backpacker is you can take a sailboat tour around these islands, which will be anywhere from 2 to 3 days. And you can go and snorkel and go swimming, and they take you on the tour to Whitehaven Beach, which is the most popular beach that you'll see in these islands. The sand on this beach is like pure white, and it's so fine that first of all, you can't take it off the island, like it's illegal to do that. There's also an unverified rumor that it was used, the sand from this beach was used to make the glass in the Hubble Space Telescope. So that's kind of cool. But it looks like this. It's absolutely lovely, and you can choose from a few different types of sailboats that you want to live on for the time that you're on your tour. I chose a catamaran style boat, so it had these two giant nets on either side. We got to hang out in the whole time. That's 100%, you gotta do that. It's so beautiful, and being out on this crystal clear blue water and just soaking up the sun for a few days is magical. Once you're done with your Whitsunday Islands tour, you're really close to the Great Barrier Reef. So one more stop up north and you are in Cairns. Cairns is a great place to hang out if you want to go scuba dive at the Great Barrier Reef. There are so many different companies that you can book a tour with, or if you have your scuba diving license, you can get someone to take you out on a boat and you can scuba dive yourself. It's a great experience, definitely a bucket list. Cairns is also really close to Cape Tribulation, which is where the Daintree rainforest and the coastline actually meet. I did also take a day tour up to Cape Tribulation where we did this like rainforest walk and got to see a whole bunch of cool lakes and waterfalls and the beautiful rainforest that is up in that northern part of Australia. So that is pretty much all of the East Coast. Now there's so many more things, I'm sure, but those are just some of the like really big highlighted, definitely see Byron Bay, definitely do Fraser Island, and definitely see the Whitsunday Islands. The way that I traveled was doing the hop on hop off bus pass, but another really great way to explore this area is to rent or buy a camper van. I know a lot of people who would buy a camper van up in Cairns, travel all the way down, and then sell it again in Sydney, or do it the other way around. So if you're a bit more looking to be your own tour guide and maybe want to save on accommodation and transportation, then definitely look into renting a camper van to do this journey. Now, Sydney is obviously where the Sydney Opera House is. Sydney is a huge, beautiful city, mostly known for its beaches and the nicer weather, kind of fashion and restaurants, and a pretty big nightlife scene. The beaches around Sydney are absolutely gorgeous. Bondi Beach is the most famous beach, and then you have Coogee Beach. There's a whole bunch of other little beaches that you can do a coastal walk to. The center, the CBD of Sydney, has a whole bunch of crazy malls. That's where the Sydney Harbour is, and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So yeah, Sydney's really great for the beaches and the really nice weather, really good food, nightlife. Sydney was like my home base when I was in Australia, so I always just kept coming back to Sydney, and I stayed most of the time at Wake Up Hostel, which is right on the corner of Pitt and George Street. So definitely check out that if you are in the center of Sydney at all. Now, the opposite to Sydney is Melbourne, and Melbourne is at the very bottom of Australia. It's more known for being the artsy, quirky, like underground scene, has a really good music scene, really good food, is covered in graffiti. You definitely need to check out Hosier Lane, which is just this lane that is constantly changing with different people's artwork and their graffiti. There's St. Kilda, which is a little suburb of Melbourne, and that's where the beaches are. Melbourne isn't really that popular for their beaches just because the water's a little bit colder and the weather can sometimes be colder down there, but it is still a really quaint little area. Definitely check out the Brighton beach boxes, which are like these rainbow beach huts that line Brighton Beach in Melbourne. So yeah, just little things like that are there. Another good place to maybe make your home base while you're in Australia. Off the coast of Melbourne is a little tiny island called Tasmania. That is one of the places I wished I would have gone. It's really, really small, but there's really beautiful hikes, vineyards, and a really cool museum on that island that is worth checking out, I think, if you have the time and money to hop over there for a little bit. Continuing around the circle, the west coast of Australia is drastically different from the east coast, but in really, really beautiful ways. It's a lot more rural, and you're going to be more like in the outback. You're going to feel really more of what Australia is like versus the kind of touristy, nightlife, fashionista side. Western coast is more like the rugged, natural beauty outback of Australia. I did a month-long tour with a tour guide and a group of about 30 people, and we went all the way from Perth, Australia up to Broome. Stopped in some amazing places, not just coast and beach towns, but places like the Kimberley region, which is like this really rugged outback region full of canyons and hikes and waterfalls and secret spots that our tour guide knew exactly how to get to. Places like Shell Beach, where instead of sand, the sand is made up entirely of little tiny shells. Places to feed dolphins, really amazing snorkel spots, and all the way at the top in Broome, there was actually a camel ride that you could take along the beach during sunset in Broome. So the West Coast is absolutely wonderful. I would maybe suggest doing a tour for the West Coast just because it is so much more rugged and so much more untouched. You really need to know exactly how far you're going to get on your tank of gas. You really need to know the maps because a lot of places don't have service at all. And if you do have a tour guide, they're going to know the local spots. They're going to know all the ins and outs of the places that you go over there, but definitely worth it to explore. In the center of Australia is Uluru, that big giant red rock. Now this is said to be a vortex of energy, one of the Earth's chakras, just this really cool red rock in the middle of Australia. So that's another iconic place to visit. The only other thing I guess maybe that you could do, which I did, was fly to Bali. I flew to Bali for 3 weeks during my stay in Australia. Definitely check out Bali if you have the option to. I could do a whole other video about Bali, so I won't get into that, but definitely an option if you're looking for some other fun things to do while you're in that part of the world. One last thing to touch on before I go, being that you're on a working holiday visa, you're probably going to need to find some work at some point. Finding a job in Australia is pretty much exactly the same as finding a job here in America. Whatever strategy you use to find a job in your work field, do that same exact thing in Australia. Use Gumtree, use your resume, or they call it a CV. Just type up your CV. They do sometimes like you to have a picture with your CV. So type that up, make a whole bunch of copies. I spent one day walking around the Sydney Harbour handing out my CV and talking to managers of restaurants, and the next day I was hired at a really cool restaurant right there in the Sydney Harbour. So loads of hospitality jobs, loads of jobs in hostels, loads of jobs in travel agencies. Farm work is also something that you can do. When I was there, this wasn't an option, but you can now do 3 months of farm work and apply for a second-year visa. But farm work is also another just great way to make sure that you have work and income. Each new person that you meet is going to be a new place that you want to go and a new connection and a new job opportunity. So just network the crap out of your friend circle. All right. Well, those are all of the highlights that I can think of to visit while you're in Australia. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to message me or leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this information helps and inspires your Australian journey.